they always want to know that they are part of the family, that they're listened to, and that you love him or her unconditionally. Whether they do well in school, whether they don't, whether they're tall, they're short, they're fat, they're thin, right? That they want to know that they are loved unconditionally.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Parents Online, a podcast channel where we share tips and resources on Catholic parenting. Presented through the lens of the theology of the body, we will see how we can be gifted to our children in ways that will help them find true happiness and flourish in accordance with God's wonderful plan for each and every one of them. Hi, my name is John Hui and I'm your host for this series. Today we're going to talk about positive parenting styles. What are these and what can we do to connect even better with our children? And to help us on this journey, we are very happy to have with us Mr. Steven Yeo. All right, Steven is currently a counsellor and family therapist who holds a master's in counselling from Monash University. I understand he's very passionate in the field of mental well-being, having been involved in preparing couples for lifelong marriages, for many years, and still is active today.
Yes, still doing good today.
Very good, and he volunteers with a family counselling agency, seeing cases ranging from depression, anxiety to marital and relationship challenges. So, welcome to Catholic Parents Online, Steven.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very happy to have you with us. Now, perhaps for the sake of our listeners, would you like to briefly introduce yourself as to how many years have you been married, how many kids you've had?
Okay.
I wouldn't ask how many wives you've had.
One wife.
Yeah. So yes, would you like to give a brief introduction about yourself?
Okay, sure. So again, I'm Steven. I'm married to my wife Lily. We've been married for 31 years.
Wow,
a long time.
Yeah.
We have 3 young adult kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. And we have also recently been a grandparents.
Oh, congratulations!
Yes,
congratulations!
yes,
How old is your grandchild?
3 months.
Oh,
3 months old.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club.
Yes,
excellent.
yes. Excited about that.
Exciting journey. Yes, that's right. Good.
Like what you said earlier on, currently I'm working as a counsellor, and I do see clients from different walks of lives, marital relationship problems, couple, family, anxiety, depression, and a whole gamut of other things as well. All right.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, it's exciting. I love this journey of grandparenting. Yeah, we get lots of
I'm
fun.
looking forward to it too.
Lots of fun without too much responsibility, but okay, that's another topic for another day.
Correct.
Maybe we'll bring you back for grandparenting. Yeah. Perhaps in relation to the topic we're discussing today, right? Would you like to share with us what are the different styles of parenting that perhaps many parents are using, different parents are using?
Right. Okay, so I guess depending on your background, your knowledge and life experiences, there are many parenting styles out there, right? Asian parenting styles may differ with the Western way of parenting styles, but actually most of us use a hybrid of parenting styles. There's no one way to do it, and I would say that broadly, at least for those who aspire to be good parents, I would broadly classify that as 2 ways of doing parenting. Let's put aside those, those who are neglectful, those who do not want to be parents, and so on. But generally, I think there are 2 types of approaches for parenting, right? The first one I would call responsible parenting. So these are parents who take on their traditional roles of caregiving and provider very seriously. For example, they will do a variety of things for family, right? They will make sure that there's food on the table. They make sure that there's roof over their heads. They may even organize extracurricular activities for them, bring them for holidays and so on, right? So they are doing everything a parent should do. But usually this set of parents may also not connect well with their children.
Oh.
Right. So for example, they may be very busy with their careers, or they become increasingly hands-off when their life gets busier and career demands a lot more from them. And as a result, a lot of them are not connecting well with their children, especially when their children reach teenage years. They have some issues with them growing up, and they find that there are no easy way for them to connect with the children. they are doing their role as parents, mind you, right? They're providing everything, but they're just not connecting well with the children.
Right. So very task-oriented parenting, you might say.
Very task-oriented parenting and very focused on making sure that they do the fundamentals of parenting well.
Right.
Except they're not able to connect, not because they, maybe for the sake of time, maybe they don't have time, maybe whatever, right?
Right.
They're not able to connect well with the children, right?
Or they're just simply brought up that way by their own parents.
Right, simply brought up the way, and that's the area that they're comfortable with, and they're not comfortable with the emotional part of it.
Yes.
Okay. Then the other group of the other set of parents that I think is what I call parents who are very focused on the outcome.
Right.
Right. I like to use the word accountable parenting, right, style, but they're very focused on the outcome of the parents. They are focused in the sense of they want their children to turn out in a certain way.
Oh.
Right. So therefore,
they feel the stress already.
Right, they feel the stress already, right? Right. The values, their beliefs, discipline are very important in raising the children. They also take a very proactive role to instill the values. They may even be much more involved in their children's life than maybe the children would like to, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah, sometimes they connect well, sometimes they don't. And sometimes inadvertently they become too controlling.
Yes.
Right, maybe a bit inflexible. So I'm sure you've heard of, statements like Asian tiger moms and things like that, right? So I would say, at least, like I said, put aside those parenting styles that are neglectful and so on. But at least for those who try to be good parents, there are those who are very focused on the material part of it, less in the emotional. And then there's another group of parents who really want to focus on the outcome.
Right.
Right. And, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's maybe a little bit too much.
Right. They think it is the best for the children, right?
Correct. They think that is the best for the children, and they really want to make sure their children turn out in a certain way. Right.
But it seems that there are expectations in the way they want their children to turn out. Am I right
Exactly.
to say that?
Right.
And there's these expectations that might be a little bit of a problem for the children who might not feel comfortable with it.
Correct.
Like I said, I already feel stressed with it.
Yeah. So in the course of it, right, they may want to connect with the child a little bit more emotionally, maybe not so authoritative, but still they want to try to shape how the children turn out. Right.
Right. So are there any other parenting styles that you would recommend then?
Recommend? What would I recommend? I don't think there's one way of parenting that will work with, each time and all the time. It really depends on the couple's values, their belief systems, as well as the family dynamics, right? Right. But I think what I would recommend is that, or what is more important is that parents keep the focus on their children and try to balance the needs, right? Things like quality time are important because relationships are long-term, right? There are no quick fix when a problem exists if it has been there for a long time. Early childhood bonds are also very important, and that develops when the parents connect well with the children as they're growing up, right? So therefore, the presence of the father and mother in a child's life is actually very important.
Right.
You cannot overemphasize that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So it appears that it would be good if parents can make sure that they are there for the children whenever they can, or make time for the children.
And make time emotionally to connect
emotionally.
with them.
So the bonding is very important.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
To affirm them, to communicate with them, to empathize with them, and to feel how they're feeling, to understand their feelings.
Correct. Right. Most importantly, to understand how the child is feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
I think very often as Asian parents, in a sense, I would say that sometimes we do have a difficulty trying to empathize and feel for our children. It's like, why can't you do the same like I did before? I survived this and I managed to overcome it. Why can't you do that? Yeah. Sounds familiar.
But one value that Lily and I uphold strongly is that we want to be hands-on parents, right? So we get involved in our children's life, even though we have a helper, but we make sure that we are present for them throughout their growing up years, and we don't outsource the emotional connection to the to the helper. Things like human interaction, I think that's very important. So that's why for us, we try not to have screen time together, but we spend more time talking, interacting. Because our family household is pretty big, our grandparents stay with us, so there's a lot of interaction that you can do with grandparents, with siblings, things like that.
Right, right. Okay, that's interesting. So, are there any? It appears that right now, what you're recommending is that as parents, we want to connect well with our children.
Yes.
Not just physically, in terms of our being there for them, and in terms of time, but also emotionally. That's very important.
That's very important, right?
So, which means, if I hear you rightly, what you're saying is that our children need to feel understood, need to feel that we are there with them and for them.
Correct.
Am I right to say
correct,
that?
Correct.
And that we are supporting them right through this journey of life, which is so tough.
Correct. And that they know, right, that they are loved unconditionally in the sense.
Right. So, I think for parents, right, when we talk about expectations, I think all parents want their children to succeed, right? And I think very typically as Asian parents, we tend to think that we want them to go a certain direction. But if we don't have expectations of them, how are they going to have a marker to go with? How are they going to have any target to reach? Don't you think we should have a certain expectation and outcome for them that we want them to aim towards? What would you say to these parents?
Yeah. So I think we have to be careful not to dictate what you want them to be. Children learn most from parents, right?
Yes.
Their actions, their behaviors, and a lot of children do follow their parents' choice of career or area of interest and so on, right? So I think expecting them to be somebody that they cannot be puts a lot of stress on them as well, right? So we have to listen to their fears, their anxieties, their interests, their strengths and weaknesses. What are those things? And also allow them an environment where they can thrive.
Yes.
Right. Children needs boundaries, right? Yes. It doesn't mean that it's free for all, right? They can do anything they want.
Right.
They need schedule. They need boundaries. They need to understand what is right, what is wrong, what is permissible, what is not, right? And many a times parents are afraid to set boundaries, right? So I would encourage parents to be confident parents, right? Admit mistakes when they do, but don't be afraid to parent your child.
Yeah,
right. I think that's important.
I've made many mistakes.
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
Even today, when I talk with my children, sometimes they bring up the certain things that I have said or I have done in the past that they actually felt hurt by, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know that hurt you that much. So sorry about that."
Right.
So I'm still learning and still learning all the mistakes I've made in the past.
In counseling, when we do family therapy, one of the things we try to do in counseling with families is actually to increase the understanding among family members. Right. So if we facilitate a conversation where we help each other to, we help the family to listen to each other without the need to respond, to judge, then you will be able to discover more things about the family, right?
Yeah.
So, some of the phrases or kind of questions we use in counseling would be like, if your child shares something with you, you can just say something like, thank you for sharing that with me. So what do you need from mommy and daddy? Right? That would be completely non-judging, like, oh, why do you say that? You're wrong, you're not supposed to say that. Then it becomes very difficult for the child to share.
Right.
Or, oh, that must be difficult for you. So how are you coping now? Or, what do you feel most going to school tomorrow? Right? Questions that allow them to feel safe to express. Because you are actually asking questions to elicit more response rather than making a comment about something that has just happened.
Right. Yeah. So you were mentioning just now about the need to really be there for our children and to affirm them and to empathize with them.
Right.
I would imagine this would take different forms at different stages of their lives.
Correct.
For example, when they're in kindergarten and they're very sensitive to having friends who tell them, "I don't friend you anymore," and they find that they don't have friends for the day and they're so upset. Right. I guess we'll talk to them. What would you say to them? Yeah.
So I think if a child is coming back at home crying, right? Usually the parents are the ones that are more stressed than the child, right? It may be a passing thing for the child. They may at that moment feel something, right? But as long as the parents don't overreact and they continue to love the child, despite what has happened, comfort the child, and it is it is less about trying to solve every single problem that comes in, but as long as the child know that when they come back from school, they are loved unconditionally, whether they someone call him or her fat or whatever, right? They're fine, right? Right. So at that age, it's different, right? And I think we also talked a little bit about, just now I mentioned the word boundaries, right? So as the child gets older, it is okay to tell the child ahead of time that you need to come back by certain days. If you shouldn't use swear language at home. So you can set boundaries for them. You can, and that help the child to navigate. Because if you don't give any boundaries to them, then they find themselves very lost because they don't know what's right, what's wrong. So by telling them the boundaries, so that when they come back with an issue, you can help them navigate because you have always given them boundaries.
Right.
Kind of a markers about life.
Right. So I guess these boundaries you're referring to would be things like you mentioned, coming back on time, by a certain time, kind of like a curfew, so to speak.
Right.
And it is done because we care for them, not because we're just trying to limit them arbitrarily for no good reason.
Because you give them boundaries, like if you're at home, you can always wash the dishes, right? Or you can help, elderly with the phone if they can't use the phone, right? So all these are things that you can call it boundaries, but we are actually inculcating values as well. Right, and if you inculcate values, you create the boundaries for them. They thrive. They thrive because you've given them some markers in life to follow, versus someone with absolutely no markers. Right, anything goes.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're actually helping them in the development of certain virtues like temperance,
exactly,
prudence,
and so on.
And also patience. When they know that they cannot get certain thing done or get what they want in a certain period of time.
Correct.
So I think what you mentioned is good, which is that we need to set boundaries, reasonable boundaries for them, but at the same time allow them the room to navigate these boundaries so that they can flourish as best as they can, according to the interests and passions
of what they want to do. Right, and if they navigate within the boundaries, and sometimes things go according to plan, some don't. Right, just work with them, talk to them again, and maybe some of the boundaries have to be readjusted a little bit, but at least there's always a conversation that goes on between you and your kids.
Right. So the conversation is important. I think that's a very important
word
that you've been bringing up.
It's very important.
So it sounds like we have affirmation, then you have the boundaries, then you have the conversation going on.
And be in touch with them emotionally as well.
Okay, Steven, so actually, based on what we've been discussing so far about the need to connect with our children and to understand them, to really empathize with them, I understand there's this thing called the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman.
Correct.
And I think it is important for us to understand what our child's love language is so that we can express our love in a way that they will appreciate, right?
Correct.
So otherwise we might be thinking that we're expressing love to them when actually they don't appreciate or they don't accept it. Right?
Exactly.
So would you like to share with us what these 5 languages of love are, please?
Sure. Yeah, so this was first coined by Dr. Gary Chapman, as you rightly pointed out, in his book, The 5 Love Languages. He describes that couples were often at odds with each other in their relationship, and it's not because they don't love each other or not because they aren't trying. It's because they express and experience love differently, right? So Dr. Gary Chapman came up with these 5 love languages. The first is the words of affirmation.
Right.
Means how you affirm each other. Quality time, spending time with each other. Giving and receiving gifts. Doing things for people, acts of service, or physical affection. Right. So as an example, right, would you think your child feel loved if you fetch him from school, right, after his CCA? Or will he feel much more loved when he receives a present? Right. So again, it depends on different children. Some, maybe girls, prefer to be fetched from school, but some will feel love if you give them a present. Or similarly, the other way around, right? Would you, as parents, feel loved if your child thank you for doing something for them? Or if they give a big hug, right? Would that be better for you, right? So you see, knowing how love is expressed and received by your child and by you actually makes a lot of difference.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. I learned it the hard way too, right?
Okay.
Yeah, over years, my wife and I had to gradually learn each other's love language. Sometimes in very painful ways. Right? Very painful ways, right?
Okay.
Yeah, my wife would love quality time and
Right.
act of service and
Right,
things like
right.
that. Yeah. For me, it was like physical touch, that,
Yeah. It's different from
it's just
my
so
wife
different.
and I as well,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. So we had to learn each other's love language and try to
Exactly.
adapt accordingly. But I can tell you, with children, it's also another kettle of fish, right? One of the mistakes we made as parents when our children were younger was when one of our kids actually had this love language of gifts, right? But we mistook it for being materialism.
Okay.
And my wife and I tried to express love in other ways except giving gifts.
Except giving gifts.
Because we felt, no, we don't want this child to be spoiled.
To be too
And
materialistic.
to be too
right?
materialistic, so
Right,
we're
right.
actually depriving this child of
the love.
of the love that was needed.
Yes,
And this child obviously didn't feel as loved, as we should have made this child feel.
That's a great example, right?
You know?
Because once you know how your child wants to receive love, then what you do will be much more precise, right? And much more accurate, and then they will feel love.
Yes.
Right.
That's right. So that's one of the things that I think we parents have to learn.
Correct,
Because it is
correct.
so easy for us to fall into this trap of showing our love in
The way that we think it should be shown, and nothing else.
That's right, and that's not what they appreciate.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. Yeah. So yes. So how else do you think we can actually, for example, tap on these 5 languages to? How can we learn a child's love language in order to try to express it in a way that they will appreciate and that in a way that they will feel our love?
Yeah. I mean, one simple way is to have a conversation with them, right, and talk about how would they feel if we do something for you or we buy you a present, right? And of course, right now, if you go and Google, you'll find there will be different online exercises you can do to find out your love language. It may or may not be 100% accurate, but at least that give you a start, right?
Yeah, my wife will help me. Yeah.
Right. So I think once you get the exercise done, maybe do it together with the children and make a bit of a fun out of it, right?
Yeah.
And once you understand your child's love language, then you start doing it and see whether they reciprocate by saying that they feel love. If they say no, maybe it's not quite accurate, and you try again.
Right. Trial and error.
Trial and error.
Yeah, story of my life. Yeah, that's right. Okay, but so it seems that what you have mentioned so far all in a way point towards this
understanding, expressing your
love,
emotions, expressing love, feeling love
in the right way that the child will appreciate, right?
Yeah,
I think, like you mentioned already before, that making time for them, spending time with them, connecting with them, and in so doing, we actually, through the time spent with them, we actually gradually learn what their love language is.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So I think the only thing I want to add on is that for parents is try not to just focus on the things that you're comfortable with. Right. I think a lot of parents may also not be so comfortable feeling and touching their own emotions, so they end up gravitating towards things like, I'll buy something for you. I'll make sure that you have a good food on the table, and bring you for an expensive holiday. I mean, they are much more comfortable doing that, but not comfortable in feeling, feeling their own emotion, expressing it, and having a conversation with their children.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. Well, okay, this being a podcast for Catholic parents, right? Yeah. And obviously, for yourself, yes, I understand you're a counsellor and family therapist. At the same time, you have a deep passion for sharing the good news with people in different ways, right? So perhaps would you share with our listeners, how we can actually help form our children in the faith, right? As Catholic parents, how can we bring them closer to Jesus and closer to the church, right?
Right. Yeah. So the family is actually a microcosm of what's happening outside, right? And sometimes we call it the domestic church, right? So family is actually a domestic church. The family unit, the daily routines of the family, the beliefs and values, the tone for the social interaction, all these are like what I mentioned earlier, a microcosm of what the world is, right? If the family exhibits good, strong Christian values, Christian faith, say grace before meals, nightly prayers before sleep, or put on your best clothes for Sunday mass, right? All these things will help form the child, right? And of course, parents have to do it themselves, right? If the parents don't do it themselves, then they will see and then they say, "Oh, this is not what it's supposed to be." Right.
We become a counter witness.
We become a counter witness to it, right? And faith and religion and Christian values have to be taught, learned, and inculcated from the very beginning, from the beginning of a child's life, right? It's not something like, oh, okay, let's wait till 7 years old, we send them to catechism class, and that's first exposure to faith. That won't work, right? You have to be done from the beginning, letting them maybe touch the rosary, maybe let them, bless them in the morning, so there are things you can do to introduce faith to them from the very beginning.
I guess as you go also at a pace that they're comfortable with, right? So I think what you've mentioned so far is so important to role model it, and to really live the faith, and that through living out that faith, our children see and feel the love of God in us and through us, right? And then they'll be more attracted to who this God is.
Correct.
Right? And then from there, they'll become more attracted to the faith and want to learn more. But be ready for the hiccups and the ups
there will
and
be
downs,
hiccups, because the pull from the secular world is very strong, right? Sometimes they get attracted to something outside, right? But continue to create this little domestic church of yours.
That's right.
So one of the things we do as a family, of course we attend mass, pray together, but to be exact, actually every day in the afternoon at 4:30 p.m. we come together to say rosary.
Wonderful,
right? Like I said, we have a big family. Our grandparents, my wife and I, sometimes my kids, the helper, right? We'll come together at 4:30 to say prayer. So that's kind of a routine, right? And we'll say intercessory prayer for others, friends who are sick and things like that. So that gives a sense of knowing that we come together, right, as a Christian family to pray for others, right? Also, we'll put the sign of the cross on the kids' forehead before they go for the day. We also notice that as the children become bigger, they like conversations during meal times, right? Because that's the time where they will share, maybe they pick up something from their friend, maybe they heard something in the newspaper. We have a conversation about it, right? And sometimes a conversation can also be difficult conversations, right? Around, relativism, secularism, abortion, gender discussions. So there are a lot of different things we can have conversations around the dinner table.
And there's dinner tables where we tell the whole family, no handphones at the dining table, please, right? Otherwise, there'll be no conversation.
There'll be no conversation. So we put aside our handphones.
So these are one of the boundaries that we set from the young, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, absolutely.
So one more point, right? So Lily and I, we are involved in the Catholic Encounter Ministry.
Yes.
So it's common for us to be talking about issues around men and women, dating, interfaith, right? A lot of couples are interfaith, premarital, sex. So there's a lot of these kind of topics that always find themselves into the conversation with the family.
That's right.
So, family mealtime is always interesting time. We never run out of topics to talk about.
That's right. That's true. Absolutely true. I find that during these meal times and we are actually talking is when our children are actually also listening.
Right.
And imbibing what we are saying.
Correct.
It's so interesting because sometimes along the way when we're having conversations with our children, and then they'll say, "Dad, I know what your stand is on this." right? Okay, when my friend told me this, but in my mind, I knew what your stand was already because we've been talking about it and things. So in a way, through all these conversations, they know where our stand is,
that's
and
right.
They also know what we stand for, what we don't.
Correct.
All right, and where we need to really, where we draw the line on certain things and all that. Right.
So, and some of these conversations do not always need to be us pushing our points across.
Just very casual.
Just casual, listen to them. Just make sure that we are there to listen to them and make them feel that we are listening. I think that's also very important.
Yes. Because sometimes they do bring up points of difference, very different points from what we would believe in.
Correct.
But like you said, it's so important to listen to them. Where are they coming from? What is the underlying value in each of their statements and all? Then after that, we question, how is that value?
Correct.
Right? So, for example, let's say abortion. Okay. You value this respect to life, or when does life begin, and things like that, and we just bring the
Discussion
conversation,
about discussion about life.
That's right. That's right. And is it a matter of a mother's rights versus a child's rights, or is it a matter of everybody's rights being respected, and how can we promote the rights of everybody involved, right?
Correct.
So I think once we can get the questions right, we would probably help them find the right answers too.
And have the right discussion. It may not be successful the first time, but over a long period of time, they will probably understand it a lot better.
So these family meal times are so important.
Very important.
Very important for really sharing and connecting together. At
And
the
even
same time.
sometimes because of our busy schedule, we may not be together having meals, and one of them may just say, hey, we haven't had family meals for a long time, let's do it this Sunday or something like that, right?
That's good. So important, right? Okay, so I guess it's been a very fruitful session so far, Stephen. During this one, we've learned really quite a lot from you. Perhaps before we bring this discussion to an end, to a conclusion, do you have any other tips that you'd like to share with our listeners out there, the Catholic parents?
So, parenting is a lifelong journey, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't end when the child becomes an adult.
You just look at my hair.
Right. Right. They always want to know that they are part of the family, that they are listened to, and that you love him or her unconditionally. Whether they do well in school, whether they don't, whether they're tall, they're short, they're fat, they're thin, right? That they want to know that they are loved unconditionally.
Right.
And I think that's a very, very important aspect of parenting, right? In our family, we have this tradition that we have it for many years already, where we call it our annual family conference.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So what we do is, if you think about in the corporate world, right, we spend so much time in offsite meetings, talking about what they want to do in next year, align objectives and so on. So we find that we should also do it for our family. So we actually go away once a year to have our own family conference. We talk about what has happened in the year that's just passed. We talk a little bit about our plans for the future, and we also ask our children to let us know what we are doing well, and what are things we have to do more, and what are things we should do less. So in a way, it's a bit like a performance appraisal.
Yes.
Right. So that means we make ourselves open to listening to feedback. Right. And of course, the feedback that they will give you is age appropriate, right? When they're young, their feedback will be like, oh, I don't like curry chicken, so don't cook curry chicken next year, something like that. But as they grow bigger, they will give really much more thoughtful feedback about what they would like, what they prefer not to have. And of course, there's a lot of good nature ribbing, affirmation, encouraging words that go around. So we think that going away and have this conference once a year is our family tradition, but it's something the rest of the families out there could also follow.
Right. Going away, you mean going for family holidays or somewhere?
Going away, staycation, right? Maybe just an afternoon, somewhere away from the house,
out of the ordinary.
Right, where they can talk about their lives, talk about how have the year been, how has PSLE been for the last year.
Yeah.
Even though PSLE is over, you can have a quick chat about it. How's preparing for secondary one look like? What would you like to do next year?
Right.
How do you like mommy and daddy to support you next year?
Right.
Give them an opportunity to have a say in the family. I think that's also very important.
Okay, that's really good. Yeah. So I think these opportunities to be with them in a less stressful environment,
correct,
in a more casual, more comfortable environment where everyone is probably more encouraged to share more openly.
Correct. Share more openly and not to take each things like if a PSLE exam as once the exam is over, it's over. Let them reflect on it, right? How has it been? What should we do differently in your next big exam? What would you like mommy and daddy to do differently, right? Get those inputs from them in a very comfortable offsite environment, right? I think that's very, very valuable as well.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Yeah, that's really, really a very good piece of advice. I'm sure many of us would have benefited from this. So thank you very much.
Correct. Yeah.
So thanks so much.
So maybe one more thing I want to also share is that as we look at the family unit, right? It starts with a couple, right? Right. Strong couples leads to strong families. Strong families lead to strong society, right? So I think that's the flow, right?
Yes.
So the parents have to, first of all, build strong relationship between them.
Yes.
Right. Because once there's strong relationship with them and have them centered on Christ, then everything else will flow properly.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
If the children see the parents squibbling, quarreling, and not getting along, it's very hard to do anything else.
Yes.
So the parents have to find ways to be united.
Yes.
To also put Christ in the center of their couple relationship. And once that happens, the family will naturally start forming properly. Right. So that's something I thought was important for me to say.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're doing is to say that Christ has to be at the foundation of marriage and family life.
It has to be.
And then upon this foundation is where you build the marital relationship,
Ships.
the relationship with your children,
with
and
the
also
larger
ultimately
society,
with large society, with church,
and everything,
and,
right?
and with community and everything.
Right.
So it appears that what you're also saying is in terms of priority, in sense, is really Christ, God first, and then our spouse.
The spouse, because the marriage is a sacrament.
Exactly.
Right. They have to be signs of God's love.
That's right.
And once the family can see it, then they will be able to see, yes, I know what you're saying.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But if they don't see that, then it's very hard to tell someone to behave in a way that they're not seeing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think many of us make the mistake of putting our children above our spouse.
Right.
When the children comes, and that's where a lot of problems will start cropping up as
spouse
well.
First.
Spouse first, right?
Yes,
God,
yes.
spouse first.
Yes,
For husbands, we know that very importantly, right?
Yes,
Be spouse first, right? And then after that, children, and then after that, work, and the community.
The community.
So all these things will then flow in properly, right? In the correct order. Otherwise, once we get it messed up, our lives will be messed up
as well.
Our families will be messed up, right? So I think that's a very good piece of advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for sharing your thoughts and expertise on this.
No problem.
Definitely, I'm sure we definitely benefited a lot from it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, dear friends, we just heard from Steven Yeo, a counsellor and family therapist, who shared with us on positive parenting styles and how we can connect with our children in a way that will help us be an even better gift to them, right? So, how we can be better parents as our gift to our children. So, till we meet again, take care and God bless you and the family always. Goodbye.
Bye.